All right. Thank you so much
You're welcome.
for meeting with me today. Just to start, would you mind sharing who you are and where you work and what your role is?
I work for CrossPurpose. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships, and that's my role here at CrossPurpose.
Awesome. Did you say your name?
Cordelia Randall.
Okay, thank you so much. So, Ms. Randall, the reason I wanted to reach out to you is because you are the one in the community building those relationships, watching the trends in terms of the workforce and what CrossPurpose can provide for our career and community development program. So I wanted to just ask you from that place a couple of questions. But before we do that, I'd like to share with you what our particular action project is.
Okay.
And just to start, it is to increase awareness of alternative pathways to success.
Okay.
So the why is approximately 2/3 of Americans do not and will not have a bachelor's degree. And yet the narrative that four-year college is the only way to succeed persists. As a result, students continue to pursue a traditional bachelor's degree, despite the cost, either financial or otherwise, and the growing number of middle skill careers in need of workers. In order to truly change the narrative around success, we need to start at the beginning of workforce continuum with high school students and parents. To ensure awareness of the variety of career paths that don't require bachelor's degrees, but still offer promising wages, growth, and security. So, within your role, what have you identified as a benefit of going into post-secondary education, particularly with the demographic that you're working with? And first, if you could describe what that population looks like. What is the makeup of that population?
The makeup of the population that I work with is usually between the ages of 18 and 40. They might have some post-secondary education, but it's limited. Not enough to actually help them secure a job that will get them above the livable or into a livable wage. Or they have gone and secured a degree in a program that just doesn't pay. So maybe it was just in communications, not just, but or in philosophy or in psychology, or where they're going to need an additional endorsement or degree in order to get a beneficial job that pays. So working with that population, what I have found is very helpful to them is they can sometimes make as much as, if not more, than the initial years of someone going into employment that has just gotten a general BA, that's not in a specialized high yield income field. So by them getting a short pathway of education that will benefit them in building a credential, they can then go out and secure a job that might pay them up to $20 an hour. I find that very beneficial, and I'm very supportive of that because that's kind of how my life has been. I have approximately 167 hours in higher ed, but I do not have a formal degree. Because when I started off, I did 3 years University of Illinois. My father died, transitioned, come here, and I was always one who was self-educating myself based on my needs and what I wanted at the time. When I had a daycare, I wanted to be able to teach. I went after, some educational endorsements for reading. When I was in business, I went after, the majority of the classes for business administration. When I entered into the nonprofit realm, I went and got a minor, equivalent of a minor in nonprofit administration, because I found that some of the classes or requirements for a degree take too long and they're just fluff. They're not really utilized well after. And so I tried to get the classes that I needed that were going to get me to the next place. And I believe that that's what's the mindset of this new generation.
Absolutely. I know that one of the things that swirls around in my head is coming from a African American culture. I definitely want to have those conversations with you. One of the things that I have experienced in our community is the bachelor's degree being a source of status,
Correct.
not necessarily like you've made it. When in reality, we're facing debt, we're facing the challenge of home ownership. There's a lot of other barriers that are not allowing us to move forward with
Correct.
just a piece of paper. Could you explain some of what you have observed with communities of color and how we have this mind frame of success being one way, one pathway?
We have this mindset of success sometimes being the degree that hangs on the wall, being the car or the Lexus that you can drive, being this artificial piece of success. But as far as capitalizing on generational wealth and actually building upon it, very few of us do it. Sometimes it's because of outside forces, but sometimes even within ourselves, we're so busy trying to look the part of success than to be the part of success. For example, rather than buy a simple entry-level house, we will rather rent for 20 years, right? Until we can get the big luxurious house, rather than buying the car that might have 80,000 miles on it, but it could be a Toyota and could last me for the next 5 years. I just got my first job out of college. It's paying $40,000. I'm going to put myself in indebtedness for the next 5 years to get that Lexus or, the Mercedes, so that it shows that I've achieved and arrived. I think we have to change and re-educate ourselves to what real success looks like. There are more African Americans now that are receiving, degrees, especially the Black woman. She's one of the, she's probably one of the, as a group, is gone the furthest of any other group that's been identified, has grown in the number of us that receive an actual degree. But often they're not working in the degree job. Okay, and then we also have to realize that statistics have shown that when we receive a degree, we're only still working at jobs that the majority is able to enter into with just a high school diploma. So that does not help us. When we are able to advance is usually when we have entered into a career field or space that recognizes us for our talents, and has some type of affirmative action in place to make sure that we are not discriminated against. Also, depending on who the gatekeeper is at the time. There are a lot of African Americans right now in Denver. We don't make up that much of the population, but you will find us at city and county and state level jobs. And that's because we are a state that has had, African American and Hispanic mayors, or people that say they support that and have allowed us to advance in those public sectors, or arenas or government sectors. And that is often what we need, because once we get there, we can show that, we can go toe to toe with anyone.
Go ahead. Is there anything else?
I don't know.
Because I love hearing from you.
Oh,
so how does that translate into how employers are, like you mentioned with particular Black women, they're obtaining all of these degrees, but they're still faced with positions that are entry level? What would it take for employers to shift that mind frame? Because I know that we could in a community, but unless employers are also on the same page, it's just...
I think it takes first for society to shift it, because they're not going to let us be the ones shifters. And that's what's happening now. You have less people who are getting the 4-year degree, a lot of times up front, that are in the workplace, because they don't see the cost being effective, to get a elementary education BA and have to owe $80,000 in debt in order to get it, to come out to get a job in this state at under $40,000 is not beneficial, So, I could have gone and got a good administrative assistant job and have made that kind of money. What they're finding is a lot of times the degree. Some companies, they're stuck on the degree, and it takes a degree just to enter in. But what we're seeing now is places like IBM, Google, you know, employers and places that have been known for having a good place to start and get a good job and a career that you want to finish well with are now even re-looking at the degree and looking at the actual qualifications or pieces that are needed to get it, because people are going out and getting a competency in the degree, but they don't know how to work within the framework. That is why traditionally, even in education, the hardest areas in order to find a good candidate have been in the sciences and math. Many people may know how to do math, but they don't know how to relay that same understanding to others or be a good teacher of math. So what they're looking for is someone that has the competency, but also is able to work within the framework to help others to get to that place. And that's harder to find. And that's the same thing that we're finding now in IT. Someone can have a degree in, data science, but they may not necessarily be that good at it in the actual performance of what's needed in the career world, or say in coding, back end coding, front end coding, being able to bring back to a client exactly what they're asking for, to have the understanding, be able to, like take that information and give them a good quality product at the other end. Sometimes what they're finding is also that they don't stay in the jobs long, the churn rate. They have found that, especially in IT now, someone who's gotten a degree in IT will go somewhere because they feel like they deserve it. They'll stay there for a year and a half. All right. Same thing sometimes for financial services. They'll stay with that company, get hired, and they want to climb the ladder and then move on to another one. Someone who has self-educated themselves by stacking credentials to get to the same place, they find will stay 2 to 3 times longer. And so I think that as a society, as we begin to look at that, as majority society begins to look at that and follow after that, then that gives us a chance to also do that. Because let's be honest, for minority candidates, unless we have more than what is normally being asked for, meaning we need the degree and the credential, often they won't even bring us in, because we have buzzwords now in the career area. And one of the big ones are they fit well in our environment. This is a team environment. It's a close-knit community, and we want people that can work well with us. All right. So I just was listening to a conference or online thing, and those are buzzwords a lot of times for, especially, let's say, Colorado in the IT industry. We want people who love to run 5Ks, who love to go climb 14ers, and love to go sit down at the local brewery after work to relax. Okay. That is not the typical lifestyle of Black and brown people. We play differently. Now, do we play in those arenas? Yes, but we may not want to always go climb a 14er. We might want to go grab a movie. We might want to go get a glass of wine, and we may want to go home to relax. Does that mean that we can't be competent in the same workforce? No. And so we need to relook at those things and see where we fit in. Now, people who are really trying to be at the forefront, and I'm going to go back into IT because I've been doing a lot of work at what makes a good fit there, especially for minorities, and how they can get entry into those fields. Good places are beginning to recognize that when they have only people that look like them and have the same behaviors as them, that when they're creating a product such as an app, right, they can be closed-minded to the needs of others, right? So say you're creating an app on the transportation system and how you use, a regional transportation system in the city and get more people involved. Well, when you're dealing with people that may prefer to bike to work or jog to work versus those that actually utilize that system, you're going to miss some elements of importance of what their needs are. And so you have people now in the tech field saying, hey, what we have found is, yes, we wanted diversity in the workforce because it looks good and we're good people. We're not trying to keep anyone out. But what they're finding is by bringing in and developing others that don't necessarily play the same way, or live the same lifestyle, that they're able to create better products that are more universal, that are going to be utilized better by the whole public than just by a few in the public.
Wow, I really appreciate that. I never thought about culture. Yeah. I definitely heard those kinds of buzzwords.
Yeah. Good work culture. That's exactly what they say out there.
Right. Good work culture.
So what's a good work culture?
Right.
And getting paid on time?
Right.
Having insurance?
right.
What are they really? What are really saying? We love this work culture. We're looking for a good fit. So what are you talking about? Someone who's good, very competent, or somebody that can sit around and have the same jokes?
And I think, if we're talking about high school students and those who are just wet behind the ears and are not aware of those intangible things to navigate the workforce, either way, either with a bachelor's or with post-secondary education, how could career exploration be more innovative and more inclusive and begin to be progressive and effective for new
exposure. Young people often, unless their parent or someone close to them works in a particular field, are not exposed to many well-paying arenas that they can pursue. For example, I went to work for an oil company, and I've gone to college, like I said, and I've known many people, but I didn't know a geophysicist, nor did I know a geologist. And so I thought, oh, that must be difficult, until I worked in the office with them. I could have studied rocks just like the next one, or the strata of rocks. But that wasn't something that I was informed of or knowledgeable about to even know that that could have been a way or a career choice for me, all right? We have a lot of young people, for example, that don't think about IT or coding. They think it will be very difficult. See, the MySpace of yesterday was teaching the young people of that day how to code, because they had to do their own pages, and it meant going back and following a code and a sequence. It's kind of funny how all of a sudden you have all these people that are not normally IT literate beginning to learn how to code, and then that format goes away, and everybody entered into Facebook, which was already generated and done for you. Now imagine if the other one had have continued. How many people would be, into IT, as front or back end developers today, just because of that experience? So we need more of those experiences. We need to know what a job really entails. With a workforce that is aging, for example, we need young people in insurance. Most of them don't have any idea of insurance. Why do I want to do insurance? How's that going to help me? They don't understand that it's very stackable, that they can go into insurance with a property and casualty, certification, and then they can move up to be into all different areas, that they can start off sometimes making $40,000 a year in insurance, right? After investing a couple of months to pass that exam, versus starting off at someone's retail place making $13 an hour, right? Then there's no growth potential, because they can actually grow. They can become developed insurance. They can, once they've gotten that, they can go in that same industry all around the United States.
How do you initiate that access? And who would be the people best to advocate for that access? Is it schools? Is it a combination of schools and employers and parents? What would that look like to best fit that pathway into the right
Someone
career?
like me in the school. We always think about a counselor, but they probably need someone in there that does strategic partnerships and how this is going to develop, how this is going to educate, how this is going to help get jobs for our students, you know. I think that that's a role that's not been taken serious in most schools. We have the counselor, but kids are coming out not knowing where to go. I was just talking with a young lady, and here in this state, for example, you can stay in a school in DPS and basically get an associate's degree out of it, you know, or join up with some place like CareerWise is doing training and stuff. Now she's saying she wants to be a medical assistant, right? And I'm trying to tell her how she can actually utilize this extra time in school. She's met all her qualifications. She has another year of school. Why aren't you taking classes instead of taking senior English or whatever they call it now, you know, senior rhetoric or whatever? Why aren't you taking the 100 level of college English, right? So that you're, first of all, you're going to take care of the requirement for you to graduate, as well as you're going to have a step in towards a degree. You know, they can come out with an associate's with no cost by doing that. Most of them just don't know the directions. They don't know how it's going to benefit them. Many teachers who do not look like their students, that still have that same thing of, like we were talking about, how a lot of offices, you know, they want people like-minded like them that are easy for them to talk to and relate to. They don't have anyone to relate to them, right? So there's nobody who takes little chandelier and sees that this girl is really smart. You know, she can really, you know, I hear her making all these rhymes, and I know she likes spoken word. What does her actual written language look like? You know, and then I look deeper and see that she's actually gifted. So, you know, she's going to do well on anything in communications and written communications. How can I show her what she could be when she grows up? Things she hasn't thought about. You know, how do I expose her? How do I take her? I think that there would be wonderful to have internships for juniors and seniors, where you go and spend time at certain jobs, just like the old days of home ec. You had to learn, you know, how to sew, how to cook, how to, you know, clean or whatever. I think it should be the same things. Let's take and do the major sectors: health sector, finance, you know, IT, and the trades. And let's have students that are exposed in all four arenas, you know, so that by the time they come out, they know kind of an inkling of things they can do to support themselves in life. And, you know, they've been exposed to it and they've seen the things that they like.
I have two more questions. And I'm trying to figure out what order I want to put this in. Okay, let's talk large view and forward thinking. What or how do you think the state can come behind and fund these ideas, to fund that progress, to be aware of the crisis? And would there be any policies that you would say, oh, yeah, this absolutely is something that would start to initiate and give momentum to some of the things we're talking about?
That's a good question. I know that the state has been on board with organizations such as CareerWise that are going after young people while they're still in high school. Now, it was years ago since I was in high school, but I don't think everything needs to be thrown out the baby with the bathwater. One of the things that was very key to where I grew up in Illinois was we had a major insurance company, right? It was called Washington National Insurance. And during our junior and senior year, we could get credit and go work there. So I got, say high school normally got out at 2:30, 3 o'clock. I would be out by 1 o'clock to go work from 1 to 5. I did that for 2 years and 2 summers, right? Some people stayed there. They didn't go to college and were able to develop their career to make good money, you know, even without, you know, the college degree. Others were able to at least be exposed to what it was really like to work in insurance field or insurance company, you know, and find out that, hey, this is not a bad office job. This is something that I can do. I think that we need to kind of move back to similar things to expose them early to see if it's a good field. Because what I have seen, so many people make a decision on college that freshman year without really knowing much about the industry working into it, that they don't stay in that path. I'd say 80% don't, right? And so they end up changing, you know, their focus, you know, and it just doesn't work out well for them. So here we are. We have people that we're training, like I love career-wise, is that we're training these young people that have never worked these industries. We can train them as a medical assistant in 2 years, find out that they're not really good at working with people one-on-one. In the health service. Maybe they'd be better behind the desk. So one of the things we could do is do more assessments to kind of show people their bend, their personality type. Are they a hands-on learner? Are they, you know, someone who likes direct contact with people, or do they do better behind the scenes work? You know, initiating more group projects, you know, to see how they work together on team, to see if they would be better employees in a team atmosphere. So I think that instead of just throwing them out and saying, get your degree or get your competency in this area and find out 3 years later, because, you know, we mature, there's a lot of change between an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old and what you want. And so it's not wasted time.
Right.
You know, have maybe short paths that are stackable to see if this proves itself.
I love it. Yeah, I know you mentioned career-wise, and just to wrap up, would you, other than CrossPurpose, would you suggest any other existing organizations, existing schools that are progressive in that way?
It's sad to say, but I really can't. Some schools have some good programs, and I don't even think career-wise it's come to a place where it can be really show data, and it hasn't been up and going long enough to show that if that's the most successful technique, you know. I think that we need more. What I love about CrossPurpose is it's cross-generational. And so a lot of times we'll have young people that come in that they're almost like looking for someone to guide me, guide me, guide me. I'm not sure what I'm good at. And by having someone who's been in the workforce before and kind of knows something about skills, after a while, you know, they're helping Tommy on IT things, and Tommy's saying, you know, helping them on math. You know, like, man, you can't do algebra. Let me show you. There's a simple way. You know, and by having that, they're calling forth each other's gifts. And I have especially seen young people have come in between 18 and 19, really almost like a light bulb goes on. Hey, I'm good at this. You know, somebody saw that I didn't even know anything about that. You know, even those that are interested in the trades, by sending them to some place like a partner like Master's Apprentice for just 6 weeks, they think that they go, I want to be an electrician. I'm thinking, man, no, I want to do HVAC. I just really love that, right? Or worst scenario, I didn't really like that. I thought I wanted to go in there because I needed a way to survive. I put in 6 weeks, but I don't want to put my whole life. Can I rethink this? And now what can I do? Right? I think that that's a good aha moment. You just saved someone up to $100,000 of getting a 4-year degree in electrical engineering, find out they didn't even like it. You know, so or putting 4 years in as an electrician and find out they didn't like it. So I really wish there were more non-competitive organizations that work together for the good of young people, to expose them to what careers are there. I wish there were more internship opportunities. I wish there were more opportunities for part-time employment outside of retail and fast food. This is the next generation. They are very smart and they can show they can be very competent. I wish there were more soft skills development, in young people. They're making a lifelong bet on what they're going to be good at, but sometimes they don't even have the mindset or understanding in order to do that. You know, if somebody's pushing for financial literacy, I think that that's something that should be really good, but there should be something, maybe a class that everyone has to take on career or exploration or personal exploration of what I'm gifted at. To me, high schooler should leave almost with a portfolio that identifies their strengths, their weaknesses, areas they can grow in, right? What types of professions that they would do well at. Back in my day, even went back to manual dexterity. We had little tests we did outside of taking SATs and ACTs. We also had things that identified, what trades we would be good in or what other career fields. And I think that that's what's needed again.
I agree, and I think that's great. And I think what I took out of that is don't throw the whole baby out. And that's what's happening every time there's an innovative program. Maybe like the first year it's not effective, we throw it out. We do something else. Where organizations aren't willing to work with one another, as you mentioned, and are competitive and want those dollars. For me, it just sounds like, too, the state could do a better job of encouraging that collaboration in communities and not necessarily have to spin their wheels and try and figure out another way. Like there's a lot of solutions already that just need to connect with one another.
And I think we need to rechange the language. Everybody now says, oh, yes, I need to send my child off to college so they can grow up. Shouldn't your child be good and grown before they go? And spend that type of money and go into debt for $80,000? So what can we do up front?
Right.
So that it's not just the experience of going off to school and living on their own, learn to do laundry because mama didn't teach them at home. So what else can we do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much
for meeting with me. And
it was a bad day. It was snowing out.
Yeah, I would love to follow up with you maybe mid like March once
I would love it.
We're solidifying our presentation.
I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
All right, let's go get some fun.